James Dack, welcome to The Year That Made Me.
Thanks for inviting me here.
You don't like the word salesman.
No, I don't. I can't even put my finger on the reason why, but when you say salesperson to someone, I hate being sold things. I like being encouraged to do things that would be good for me to do, and that's not a sales process. I think if someone realises it's good for them, then they'll probably do it with a bit of encouragement.
If you don't want to be a salesman, you were an encourager.
Oh, a conduit.
A conduit of great achievements, at least by the measurements that the real estate industry takes, and that is that you sat across a great deal of money.
Yeah, thanks for noticing you. I appreciate it. Look, it was a very enjoyable time, but, you know, there was something about it that annoyed me, for want of a better word, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It actually made me sad to be in the industry, and this is not a judgment on anybody in the industry. I've got great friends in the industry. It's one of the last bastions of the entrepreneur. You know, you work hard and you make as much money as you can from your efforts. Not many jobs offer you that. So I had a bit of an epiphany, a look in the mirror. You know, I didn't want my legacy to be in real estate. So an opportunity came. The company was going to an IPO. I personally didn't like the look of that, and subsequently that became the watershed moment for me.
So when you walked, and soon after, you did make a bonfire of your suits.
Yeah, I did. In year 12, when I left St Mary's Cathedral, I did the same thing. It was like an initiation of sorts to say, you know, you're a boy to become a man now. You need to get a job. You need to look after your brother and sister. From the real estate side of things, it was goodbye and, you know, thanks and good riddance.
So you're burning, literally, your bridges?
Yeah, absolutely.
What were you burning when you were leaving high school?
I was burning, you know, a lot of the childhood memories that I had. Unfortunately, I had an alcoholic father who wasn't great, and I think my mother died prematurely from the stress he created in our family. And, you know, when I was 21, she passed away, and my brother and sister were still at school, so I had to take the wheel of the bus, so to speak. So
let's talk about your father. How would you describe your father?
You know, not very nice, gripped by alcoholism, which when you're a young boy and, you know, he's mistreating your mother and you can't do anything about it, it's just not nice. And you've got a younger brother and sister as well, and you're sort of defenceless, but you can hear and see the impact of it.
So you were growing up as the oldest boy, the oldest child in a family with a violent alcoholic father and a stoic mother who would...
Oh, brilliant mother, brilliant. I owe everything to her in terms of my resilience and optimism and, you know, outlook on life came from her. She was an incredible woman.
She put you and your siblings through private schools while you were living, at least part of that time, in Housing Commission.
Oh, yeah, and we were in Housing Commission all our life. I mean, I thank the government very genuinely for creating an opportunity for our family to be able to live in an area like Woolloomooloo, which was, you know, close to the harbour and close to the city, and, you know, we had a pool and domain. We could walk into town, and it was the greatest time of my life. It was bittersweet. I mean, inside the walls of our own home, it wasn't great, but outside it was like one big family. I mean, they call this the lucky country here, and part of the reason why I'm so dedicated to the PCYC, which is a wonderful organisation, is that I don't want people to feel like I felt when I was a kid, because I don't think a lot of kids would be able to get through that, you know.
You have given a lot of your time back to charity, and particularly back to the PCYC.
When I was 8 years old, I started going to PCYC.
This is the police
community youth clubs. That club at Woolloomooloo, I mean, it's like my home. It really is. It's like a meditation when I go there. It's escapism. And I think that what I want for other people is that if you're experiencing things that you have no control over, at some point in time you will have control over them, and you need to spend time with people that actually make you feel good and have got good intentions. And the PCYC did that for me.
Do you see kids coming in who are in danger of going off the rails?
Oh, look, there's some great kids that come into that club that are almost reborn. You know, it's like putting, you know, water on a rose that hasn't been watered for 4 or 5 days, and all of a sudden you see them spring up. Kids, you know, all they want is some attention, a pat on the back, and also words of assurance when they've done something wrong. And I know this organisation provides that.
I really want to try to drill down where you came from, because you were living in harsh conditions. Your home life was horrible, and then your mum dies, and you've got 2 younger siblings a brother and a sister, and you take responsibility for them and their well-being, where did you wind up living?
We were still in the Department of Housing home in Woolloomooloo, and I had to go around and see them about what had happened. And fortunately, we were able to stay on, and I was the person responsible for it then.
Well, one thing you did do is you walked away from that housing department house.
Yeah.
You gave it back to them.
Well, my sister had moved out, and my brother and I were living there, and we needed to give this to a family that needed it because we were both healthy, young blokes, and we really didn't have anywhere to go when we made the decision to leave the house. But the manager of the Woolloomooloo PCYC asked us to be sort of cleaners and, look out for the place, sort of pseudo-cleaner sort of attendants, if you like, at the club, and we lived there for about a year and a half.
It's funny because you're it's not a unique, but it's a rare position to reflect on the value of money compared with other things which might be real, because it's not just the money that you made. Your wife didn't marry you for your money because she is the daughter of a billionaire.
Yeah, and that pressure comes from that as well. I mean, in that I'm very driven as a person, and I want to be the king of my jungle, and I respect my father-in-law very much for what he's done.
This is Jack Cowan.
In all sorts of different ways. And his wife, Sharon, is an incredible human being. I'm very lucky here. I mean, I count my blessings every day. My kids are healthy,
Sure. I mean, you live in a big house
Yeah.
in a lovely part of Sydney, and a lovely part of the world, let's be frank about it. And yet a couple of years ago, you told Jan Event for an interview that when I walk into this house, I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah. I just feel from where I come from, I know the pain of others, and I walk in here and I see the dog and the cat and the fish and the bird and the bees. That we've got a beehive as well. My daughter Emily loves the beehive. My son,
and the tennis court and the
loves
swimming pool.
All of that, I sort of get anxious about it because I know how much pain there is out there on the streets. I really do. I felt it myself. I see it. It's like you wish everything was all right, but you know it isn't.
But when you look at the wealthy and the rich and poor divide in Australia, because you've walked both sides of that street, is that a gulf other than embodied by you and your quite unusual experience? Is it a gulf that will never be breached?
I'll give you an example of that. You go down to Plunkett Street School and I was running a scholarship program there for quite some time.
It's a tough school in Woolloomooloo, just outside the King's Cross, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
You can get a 3-iron and hit a ball into the finger wharf at Woolloomooloo, and you'll hit a $20 million apartment. Those kids, when I went down there a number of years ago, could not afford a jumper in winter, not able to afford lunch, and the actual gulf is substantial. It's substantial, and it's on your doorstep.
What's the damage that gets done by the gulf between rich and poor?
I think people feel like they're failures.
Because you feel a failure because you see the gleaming tails of those who have it.
You're just not doing it. You can't provide the things that other people can provide for their own kids, the holidays, the cars, the education, the food, the restaurants, the whole kit and caboodle.
We asked people for the year that made them. What's the year that made you?
Oh, look, there's many moments of truth in my life, Hugh, many. Well, one significant moment for me was when I was when I went to school. I used to read a lot, and I was an avid reader. I just absorbed, books like they were, like I was a sponge. And, I climbed up on a roof one day and I grabbed a live wire and I was electrocuted, and I spent 3 months in hospital.
So what year was that?
It was 1272. I actually was sitting for a scholarship to pay for my whole secondary school education. My mother had nothing. My father probably left and come back for the third or fourth time, disappeared for months and came back. And this moment for me was significant insofar as I felt like I'd let my mother down by being electrocuted, as strange at 11, 12 years old. But the problem was when I came back out of hospital, I had not the same outlook on study, and I just didn't have the ability to be able to read books like I used to.
Had it blown your concentration?
Mate, I think the trauma was so substantial that I spent the next year and a half not being able to walk under electrical overhead power lines. I'd walk against the wall. I don't think anyone diagnosed it. I looked in the mirror and I knew what I was going through, and I was trying to steel myself for it and jump over it. you know.
It was a thing you had to overcome.
Yeah, it took a little while, but I got there, and that was the moment, I think.
Well, James Dack, it's been an absolute pleasure to find out a little bit about who you are.
Thanks to you.
Fantastic. Thank you.